I don't know about you, but I can literally tell how long we are into each lockdown by the state of my barnet and how long it takes me to get it ready for the next video call. But today I want to talk to you about the equipment that I use to record video, because lots of people ask me all the time about what it is that I use to record video for YouTube and LinkedIn. I mean, if I'm honest, no one's ever asked me, but the video wouldn't kick off quite the same way if I said that. So I want to run you through the basic equipment that I'm using, and that starts with the camera. Now the camera is an APC mirror camera, a DSLR, the Sony a6400. It's a really great camera, and one of the main reasons I went for it is I can shoot 4K video at 30 frames a second, and it doesn't shut off after 30 minutes like a lot of other cameras do. And I paired that with a really beautiful lens. Now the lens is one of the most important parts of anything. It creates depth of field. Now the lens is one of the most important parts with photography and videography. As most photographers will tell you, it's all about the glass. And in this case, I went for an absolute classic, the Sigma 16mm f1.4. Now for those who don't know, the f1.4 is the aperture size. It's all about the lower it is, the more light that gets into the camera. And there's a thing called ISO. ISO is essentially how much the camera needs to compensate digitally for the lack of light in the scene. And what you'll notice is the higher your ISO is, the more grainy the picture appears. The lower it is, the cleaner the image appears. And a 1.4 is really fantastic for getting light in. It's something, this combination's a bit of a classic combination for low light photography. And given that I was just in this room, it was perfect. And you can look as great as you want on video, but if people can't hear you, it's pointless. So I wanted a really, really good microphone. I started out with the Elgato Wave 3, and I would still recommend that to most people who want to record, want Zoom sessions and the like. I used to have it sat about here in shot, but I felt it made it look like I was in some kind of radio studio, and I didn't want that. I wanted it to look more like I was just having a conversation with you. And I thought about, how do they do this in TV? And the answer to that is they keep the microphone actually slightly out of shot, and they use what's called a shotgun microphone. You wouldn't hold a bank up with it, but it's very, very smart technology. And put simply, it just looks for sound in a straight line from the end of the microphone. It doesn't pick sound up from all around it like a normal microphone would. So you need to point it directly towards yourself. And I've put it on what they use in TV studios, which is a boom pole, and here it is. So you'll see it's just out of shot, and it's just pointing down towards my mouth at all times. And the microphone I went for was the Rode Videomic Pro Plus, not like the little caffeine capsules you have. And I have that plugged directly into my PC via a 3.5mm jack. The only problem with it is you do need to make sure you charge it, because it's wireless. So it can be really annoying if you're about to go onto a video call and you suddenly realize that the battery's running flat. The good news is it does have about 100 hours of battery life, but if you were using it every single day for Zoom calls and conferences and recording video, it would run out quite quickly. The great thing is though, it does take AA batteries, so I've always got a little set to one side so that if it happens to run out just before we're doing a recording, so I do stupid things like that, then I've at least got them to hand so I can continue to use it. And then finally, probably the most important point, particularly if we think back to the lens and we think back to the ISO and the natural light and the aperture, it's lighting. I have completely overkilled lighting for this set. I've got far too much lighting, but I kind of like it. So I've got 3 lights on my desk right now, and I could probably do with either 1 or 2 of them. So in front of me directly, I've got the Elgato ring light. Now I did a comparison of that online with the 2 that sit either side, so do check that out below in the links. And in most cases, you would just use that on its own. That's probably the sensible choice. For me, I personally bought it because I wanted it for when I was shooting elsewhere in the room or elsewhere in the house, or just needed a lighting source for photography. Now I'm going to start with either side of me. Either side I have on my left and on my right at about a 45-degree angle an Elgato key light Air. And those are controlled with this. And this is a Stream Deck Mini, again by Elgato. And this enables me to program buttons in, so at the touch of a button, I can do certain things like open Zoom, open OBS, or set a particular lighting setup going. And these key light Airs are fantastic. You can control the brightness of them. You can control the temperature of them. By temperature, we mean either very, very bright with a bluey tint, or very, very orange, really. It goes kind of like this, which makes me look a bit like I've got loads of fake tan on. Now I tend to set mine to about 25% brightness with about 3400K. Now that's the brightness level. That's kind of more towards the orange than the blue, but I'm a bit pasty and it gives me at least a bit of color. Now you can have these way too bright. So if I put them to 100%, they're gonna burn my eyes. 25% for me at this distance is perfect. And then directly in front of me, I have an Elgato ring light. Now, I don't need that there. I could just use the key light airs. I just happened to buy the ring light because I wanted a lighting source for if I wanted to face a different direction in the room, if I wanted to shoot elsewhere in the house, or if I just wanted to do some static photography. And as I say, I don't really need it, but when I did a test of them, of which there is a video comparing these two lights actually on my channel, so check that out. When I did a comparison, actually, I thought the key lights were probably better than the ring light if you used them in isolation. I preferred the key light lighting. It seemed to give a more balanced view than the ring light on its own. However, when I used all three together, I felt that gave the best lighting profile. So that's why I still use it, even though it is massive overkill. You definitely don't need it. Just to give you an idea, this is the ring light on its own at 25%, at 50%, and at 75%. This one's a bit bright now. Conversely, here are the key lights at 25%. Here's the key lights at 50%. And again, here they are burning my retinas at 75%. Ugh. Now, I am by no means an expert on lighting, but I have read a lot of articles on it. And they seem to suggest the best way at lighting yourself, particularly when using a green screen, is to use a 3-point lighting system. You have one to your right at 45 degrees, one to your left at 45 degrees, and one over your shoulder, which gives you a backlight at the back of your head to separate you from the background. So that's the setup I've got. Now, it's massive overkill for what you need. You don't need anything at that level. You can use a 1080p webcam. You could use a Logitech Brio, which is 4K for video. And I've used that with clients in recording video before very, very effectively. But if there's one thing you're going to invest in tomorrow, it's probably lighting. Actually, the sound for most people is generally all right, especially if they're using like earpods or similar. But the real place that people fall down is always on the lighting. The less lighting there is in the room, particularly if you can use natural light, even better. The less lighting you have, the grainier the image becomes, the more blurred it becomes. And the one thing you do miss out on with a 1080p camera or even a 4K camera versus a DSLR mirrored system is the lack of depth of field that you can see. Now, if you look at the moment, I should be quite sharply in focus. I apologize for all this. It's just my face. I can't do much about it. But if you look at the background behind me, very, very blurred, or just blurred enough, you might say. And that's what we call bokeh or bokeh, or I don't even know what you call it. Is it bokeh? We'll go with bokeh. B-O-K-E-H. And that's the blurring of the background. It's the separation of the person in the foreground, or the subject in the foreground, from the background, and that draws more attention to the person in the foreground. So what equipment are you using, and what do you think's the most important thing when taking video? And if I leave you with nothing else, it's not that you need this equipment. I'm just letting you know what I'm using and the importance of light in particular. But actually, just start creating. Most people will have a 4K video camera on their mobile phones. So just look into that and tell me something about you. Because if we take LinkedIn, for example, if you're creating rather than curating content, you're in a really elite group of maybe 2% of users. And I'd always rather be in the 2% than the 98%. But please smash that like button. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Consider subscribing to the channel. But for now, we will see you on the next one.